My mother screamed, "You're ungrateful, get out and never set foot in this house again." So, I left, but they had no idea what was coming next. So, this is Jake talking, and I'm gonna tell you about the time my life completely went sideways. I was 19, living in this beige house in Denver that looked exactly like every other house on the block. You know those neighborhoods where they probably used the same blueprint for 50 houses in a row? Yeah, that was us. My mom, Linda, God, where do I even start with her? She had this way of looking at you like you'd already disappointed her before you even opened your mouth. And my dad, Robert, he's one of those guys who just exists, I guess? Always hiding behind his newspaper or the TV, making these little grunting noises that were supposed to pass for conversation. Then there's Emma. She's my little sister, 16 at the time, and honestly, the only person in that house who ever seemed to get me. I'd been working at this dive called Murphy's Diner for about 8 months. Nothing glamorous. I'm talking sticky floors, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and this ancient grill that made sounds like a dying whale. But the regulars were cool, especially this one dude who came in every Tuesday and always, and I mean always, left exactly $2.17 as a tip. Never $2.15, never $2.20, $2.17, like it meant something to him. Here's the thing though, everyone assumed I was going to do the whole college thing. Community college first, then transfer somewhere, get some boring business degree, end up in a cubicle counting down the minutes until 5 o'clock. Linda had it all mapped out in her head, probably had spreadsheets and everything. But I had this other idea brewing. Been stuffing money into this ratty shoebox under my bed, like some kind of squirrel hoarding nuts for winter. Wasn't saving for college though, I was saving for something that made my heart race every time I thought about it. The fight started small. Linda would make these passive-aggressive comments during dinner. "Oh, Mrs. Chen's son just got into 3 colleges," or "I saw your friend Marcus got that internship at the bank." Dad would just turn up the volume on whatever game was on. Emma would catch my eye across the table and roll hers, like she knew exactly what was coming. I remember this one dinner, we were eating Linda's famous tuna casserole, which honestly tasted like someone mixed cat food with mayo and called it a day, and she just launched into this whole thing about how I was wasting my potential. That phrase, man. Wasting my potential. Like potential was this finite resource I was just throwing in the garbage. The worst part? She never even asked what I actually wanted to do with my life. Just assumed I had no plan, no dreams, no clue about anything. If she'd bothered to ask, maybe things would have gone differently, but she didn't ask. And I didn't tell her about the shoebox, or the business plan I'd been scribbling on napkins during slow shifts, or the way I'd been studying the lunch rush patterns downtown, figuring out where people gathered, what they wanted to eat, how much they were willing to pay for something that didn't taste like cardboard. Should have seen it coming, really. The explosion was building for months. The whole thing blew up on a Tuesday. Isn't it weird how life-changing moments always happen on the most random days? Like, you'd think the universe would at least wait for a weekend. I'd just finished a brutal double shift at Murphy's. We'd had this bus full of tourists come in right before closing, and they all wanted complicated orders with substitutions and extra this and no that. My feet were killing me. I had grease stains on my shirt that were definitely never coming out, and all I wanted was a hot shower and maybe some Netflix. But Linda was waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed, that look on her face that meant I was about to get lectured. Robert was already sitting at the table looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Emma was smart enough to disappear upstairs. "We need to have a conversation," Linda said, which is parent, speak for, "You're in trouble, and I'm about to tell you exactly how much trouble you're in." She'd gotten a call from Mrs. Patterson at the community college. Application deadline was next week, and surprise, surprise, I hadn't submitted mine, because I wasn't planning to submit one. Ever. I've been thinking about other options, I started, but Linda wasn't having it. Other options? Jake, you're 19 years old, you work at a diner, and you live in your childhood bedroom. What other options could you possibly have? That stung. Not just the words, but the way she said them, like my life was this pathetic joke that everyone was too polite to laugh at. "I want to start a business," I said. "A food truck." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Robert set down his newspaper with this little rustling sound that seemed really loud all of a sudden. Linda's face went through about 12 different expressions in the span of 3 seconds. "A food truck," she repeated, like I'd just told her I wanted to become a professional unicorn trainer. "I've been saving money. I've got a business plan. I know exactly what I want to do." "You want to be a street vendor." Her voice got that high, shrill quality it got when she was really worked up. "My son, who could go to college, who could make something of himself, wants to sell hot dogs from a truck." "It's not hot dogs, it's ridiculous is what it is." She was full on yelling now. "You have no idea what you're talking about, no experience running anything, and you think you're just going to waltz out there and become some kind of entrepreneur." Robert tried to jump in. "Now, Linda, maybe we should." "Don't you dare," she snapped at him. "I'm tired of this, tired of the attitude, tired of the unrealistic dreams, tired of having a son who's too stubborn to see that we're trying to help him." "Help me?" I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum. "When have you ever helped me? All you do is tell me what's wrong with every idea I have." That's when she really lost it. Her face went bright red, veins popping out on her forehead like angry little rivers, and she screamed, actually screamed, "You're ungrateful. Get out and never set foot in this house again." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire you can't put out. Even Linda looked shocked that she'd said them. Robert's newspaper slipped from his hands. Somewhere upstairs, a door closed quietly. Emma, probably listening from the hallway. "Fine," I heard myself say, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. "I will." And just like that, everything changed. You know what's weird about packing up your entire life? It's not the big stuff that gets to you. It's the random little things. Like this stupid rubber ball I'd had since I was 8, or the cologne Robert gave me for my 18th birthday that I'd never actually used. Every single item felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Emma snuck into my room while I was shoving clothes into garbage bags. Her eyes were all red and puffy. "She didn't mean it," she whispered. "You know she didn't mean it." But we both knew that wasn't true. Linda might apologize eventually, might even beg me to come back, but those words were out there now. You can't unring a bell, you know? "I'll be okay," I told Emma, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "And hey, I'll text you all the time, drive you crazy with updates about my food truck empire." She gave me this fierce hug, like she was trying to squeeze all her worry and love into me at once. "I believe in your crazy food truck idea," she said. "I think it's going to be amazing." My best friend David picked up on the first ring when I called him from the driveway. "Dude, it's like 1 in the morning. Someone better be dead or dying. Can I crash at your place? Family situation got nuclear." David's apartment was basically a glorified closet above a dry cleaner's shop. The whole place smelled like chemicals and that weird industrial detergent smell, but it felt like a palace compared to the war zone I'd just escaped. We sat on his lumpy couch eating cold pizza and trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. "So you're really doing this food truck thing?" David asked, handing me a warm beer from his mini fridge. "That's either the bravest thing I've ever heard or the stupidest." "Probably both." The first week was brutal. I picked up every shift I could at Murphy's, sometimes working 14-hour days until my feet were so swollen I had to cut my socks off. David was cool about me staying, but his girlfriend Sarah wasn't exactly thrilled about having a house guest who slept on the couch and left dirty dishes in the sink. Can't say I blamed her. Finding an apartment in Denver on a diner worker's salary, forget about it. The cheapest place I could find was $800 a month for a studio the size of a walk-in closet, and that was in a neighborhood where you counted your fingers after shaking hands with strangers. I started looking at room shares with college kids and people whose life stories I really didn't want to know. But here's the thing, the harder it got, the more determined I became. Every morning when I woke up with a crick in my neck from David's ancient couch, every time I counted the wrinkled bills in my shoebox. Every time I walked past this empty lot downtown where I imagined parking my future food truck, I felt this fire in my chest. Like all that struggle was just fuel for something bigger. Emma kept me updated on the home front through secret texts. Apparently, Linda was pretending nothing had happened, but she kept making too much dinner by accident and setting 4 places at the table instead of 3. Robert asked about me once, then went back to his newspaper when Linda gave him the death stare. The loneliness was the worst part, though. You don't realize how much you depend on family routines until they're gone. No more Sunday morning pancakes with too much syrup. No more fights over the TV remote. No more Emma practicing piano while I pretended to do homework at the kitchen table. Just me, David's lumpy couch, and the sound of industrial washing machines humming below us all night long. But I kept saving every penny I could squeeze out of my budget, and slowly, very slowly, my food truck dream started feeling less like a fantasy and more like something that might actually happen. 3 months after the great family explosion, I met the guy who basically saved my life. Mr. Thompson, never learned his first name, always called him Mr. O. Thompson came into Murphy's every Thursday morning for coffee and dry wheat toast. Always sat in booth 7 by the window, always left exactly 20% tip calculated to the penny, always said, "much obliged," when I topped off his coffee. Thing about being a server is you become this weird anthropologist of human behavior. Mr. Thompson had these hands that told stories, rough and scarred from real work, but clean fingernails and this expensive-looking watch that he wore loose on his wrist. His clothes were simple but quality, the kind of stuff that lasts forever if you take care of it. One Thursday, he was reading the business section when I brought his usual order over. There was this headline about food trucks becoming the new big thing in downtown Denver dining, and I probably stared at it a little too long. "Interesting article," I said, trying to sound casual. He looked up with these sharp blue eyes and smiled. "You thinking about getting into the food truck business?" I almost dropped the coffee pot. "How did you?" "Son, I've been watching you work in this place for months. You move around that kitchen like you own it, but your eyes are always looking somewhere else. Plus, you've been taking pictures of that vacant lot across from the courthouse during your breaks. Not exactly subtle." Busted. That lot was perfect. Foot traffic from the courthouse, office buildings, community college campus. I'd been studying it like I was planning a heist. "It's just a crazy idea," I mumbled. "Probably won't happen anyway." "Why not?" Such a simple question, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. Why not? Because I was 19 and sleeping on a friend's couch? Because my family thought I was delusional? Because I'd never run so much as a lemonade stand? "Sit down," Mr. Thompson said, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "Tell me about this crazy idea." So I did. I told him everything, the shoebox full of cash, the business plan I'd been scribbling on napkins, the menu ideas that kept me awake at night. Comfort food with a twist, fresh ingredients, nothing frozen or processed. I told him about my theory that people were tired of eating garbage that tasted like cardboard, that they wanted real food made by someone who actually cared. He listened without interrupting, asked questions that made me think harder about stuff I hadn't even considered. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "What's your startup budget?" he asked finally. 15,000. Maybe 18 if I keep saving." He shook his head. "Not enough." My heart sank into my shoes. "I know it's not much, but..." "It's not enough because you're thinking too small." He pulled out his phone, showed me pictures of food trucks that looked like mobile restaurants. "You want to compete with the big chains? You need to look professional. Quality equipment, proper branding, all the permits and licenses. That's 40,000 minimum." 40,000 might as well have been 40 million. "But," he continued, "I know some folks who invest in small businesses, local people with money looking for young entrepreneurs with good ideas and strong work ethics. If you're serious about this, really serious, I can make some introductions." Turns out Mr. Thompson used to own 3 hardware stores before he retired. Sold them all, and now spent his time helping young people start businesses. Paying it forward, he called it, like good karma, was an investment strategy. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in this fancy coffee shop downtown, wearing my one good shirt, presenting my food truck concept to 3 successful business owners like I actually knew what I was talking about. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely hold my notes. But something clicked during that meeting. Their questions were tough but fair, and somehow I had answers. Real answers, not just wishful thinking. They wanted to see my business plan properly written up, financial projections, marketing strategy, adult business stuff. I spent the next month at the public library, learning about profit margins and health department regulations and customer acquisition costs. Boring stuff that suddenly felt like the most important knowledge in the world. The day I found my food truck was like Christmas, and my birthday rolled into one. She was sitting in this lot in Lakewood, owned by a guy who'd tried selling hot dogs but gave up after 6 months. Faded red paint, equipment that needed work, a fryer that made concerning noises, but she had good bones, and the price was right. "What are you going to call her?" David asked, as we walked around the truck, making lists of everything that needed fixing. I thought about Emma's goodbye hug, about Mr. Thompson believing in my crazy idea, about all those mornings I'd woken up on David's couch, knowing I was working towards something bigger than myself. "The comeback kitchen," I said, "because sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out who you really are." Opening day was October 15th, and I don't think I slept at all the night before. David helped me load supplies at 5 a.m., both of us running on coffee and pure adrenaline. My hands were shaking as I drove downtown to claim my spot in that perfect lot across from the courthouse. My first customer was this lawyer lady heading into work early, sharp suit, expensive shoes, the kind of person who probably ate at fancy restaurants, not food trucks run by 19-year-old kids. She looked skeptical reading my handwritten menu board. She ordered the breakfast burrito special, scrambled eggs, local cheese, chorizo, and this sauce I'd been perfecting for months, all wrapped in a fresh tortilla. I watched through the service window as she took her first bite, expecting her to politely finish it and never come back. Instead, her whole face changed, skeptical to surprise to this look of pure joy, like she'd just discovered something amazing. She came back the next day with 3 coworkers. Word spread faster than I'd imagined possible. By the end of the first week, I had a line of regulars waiting when I opened at 7 a.m. The courthouse people loved my verdict sandwich, pulled pork with tangy coleslaw on brioche bread. College kids couldn't get enough of my loaded fries with 3 different cheese sauces. But the game changer was this food blogger from Denver Eats. Middle-aged woman with a serious notebook showed up on a Wednesday afternoon and ordered like half my menu. Spent 20 minutes asking about ingredients and cooking methods. I figured she was just really curious about food. The review went live 3 days later. Hidden gem alert. The comeback kitchen serves up comfort food gold. She called my chicken and waffles life-changing and said I was redefining street food in downtown Denver. My phone exploded. Other bloggers, newspaper reporters, even some guy from Channel 7 wanting to do a morning show segment on young entrepreneurs making waves. The line at my truck went from 20 people to 50 to 100. I had to hire my first employee just to keep up with orders. The money was absolutely insane. I went from counting crumpled singles to depositing thousands into my business account every week. Mr. Thompson helped me set up proper bookkeeping, showed me how to track expenses and plan for taxes. Real business owner stuff that made me feel like maybe I actually knew what I was doing. Emma found out about my success through Instagram before my parents did. She'd been following my account, watching the photos of crazy long lines and 5-star reviews piling up. She called me crying happy tears. "Jake, there's an article about you in the Denver Post, with your picture and everything." That's when it really hit me. 6 months ago, I was the family failure, the kid with no plan and unrealistic dreams. Now, I was getting written up in newspapers. The weirdness of that was almost too much to process. "Have Mom and Dad seen it?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Emma got quiet for a second. "Mom saw it. She didn't say anything, just cut it out and put it on the refrigerator." On the refrigerator, right between Emma's honor roll certificate and Dad's bowling league schedule. Like I was part of the family again, even though we hadn't spoken since that nuclear explosion in the kitchen. The success was everything I'd dreamed of, but it came with this weird loneliness I hadn't expected. I had customers asking about my background, how I learned to cook, where I got my start. I'd tell them about working in diners and watching YouTube videos, but I couldn't tell them about Sunday mornings helping Mom make pancakes or the way Dad taught me to scramble eggs without making them rubbery. Success tastes different when you're eating it alone. The call came on a Sunday morning in December. I was prepping vegetables for the lunch rush when my phone rang, and Linda's name on the screen made my stomach do this weird flip thing. Jake? Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, kind of fragile. Would you be willing to talk? We met at this coffee shop in Cherry Creek, neutral territory, halfway between my world and theirs. I got there first, ordered black coffee, and sat in a corner booth trying not to shred my napkin into confetti. When they walked in, I was shocked by how different they looked. Linda seemed smaller somehow, like she'd been carrying something heavy for months. Dad's shoulders were hunched, and he had these dark circles under his eyes I'd never noticed before. "Hi, son," Dad said quietly, sliding into the booth across from me. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much lately. "We've been following your success," Linda said carefully. "The articles, the reviews, we're incredibly proud of you." The words I'd been waiting months to hear, and now they just felt hollow. Are you proud of me, or are you proud of what other people are saying about me? Linda's eyes filled up with tears. "That's fair, more than fair. Jake, I said horrible things to you, unforgivable things. I was terrified. Terrified you'd fail and get hurt. Terrified I'd failed as a mother by not pushing you toward something safe and predictable. I wasn't asking you to guarantee my success," I said. "I was asking you to believe in me." "I know," Dad said, and his voice cracked a little. "We should have seen what that businessman at the diner saw, what your customers see now. You're not the same kid who left our house angry. You're a real entrepreneur, someone who took a massive risk and made it work." The conversation was brutal. There were tears, raised voices, long silences where we all tried to figure out how to rebuild something that had been completely demolished. But slowly, piece by piece, we started putting our family back together. They wanted me to come home for Christmas dinner. I said yes, but with conditions. No more lectures about my life choices, no more comparing me to other people's kids. And they had to accept that I was an adult now, making my own decisions about my future. Christmas dinner was awkward as hell at first. We all sat around the table making careful small talk about the weather and Emma's grades, tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. But then Dad asked about my expansion plans, and Mom wanted to know about my employees, and suddenly we were having a real conversation about my business like adults. "I'm thinking about opening a second truck," I told them, "maybe even a brick-and-mortar restaurant eventually." "That sounds wonderful," Mom said, and for the first time in forever, she sounded like she actually meant it. After dinner, Emma and I did dishes together like old times. She told me about her new boyfriend, her college plans, her part-time job at the bookstore. Normal sibling stuff that I'd missed more than I realized. "I'm glad you left," she said quietly, as we dried the last plate. "Not because I wanted you gone, but because you needed to prove something, to yourself and to them." She was right. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover who you really are. Sometimes the best thing your family can do is let you go, even when it breaks everyone's heart. 6 months later, the Comeback Kitchen got featured in Food Wine magazine as one of America's most innovative food trucks. I framed the article and hung it in my new apartment, a real apartment with actual furniture and a kitchen where I could experiment with new recipes. But I also kept a photo on my nightstand from that Christmas dinner, all of us together again, smiling like we meant it. Because sometimes the best comebacks happen when you realize you never really left at all.